the perfect day to make pasta. Let's do it. Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you my go-to pasta recipe that I use to make homemade tortellini. Okay, let's start by grabbing our pasta ingredients. You're going to need about 1 cup of flour, 1 whole egg, 1 egg yolk, 1 ounce of olive oil, and a good pinch of salt. Traditionally, this pasta dough would be made by hand. However, I'm going to use the mixing bowl to make my life a little bit easier. I start by adding the flour to the bowl, and now I'm going to mix my 2 wet ingredients together. I'm going to take the olive oil and add it to the whole egg and the egg yolk, and then I whisk it together. I feel like this helps the pasta dough come together a little easier since I gave it a head start. I also put a pinch of salt in there. Once the eggs are whisked together, I form a little well in the bottom of the bowl that I'm going to pour the egg mixture into. This will help the dough to come together a little easier, and it's kind of imitating the traditional process as well. Now I go ahead and move the bowl to the stand mixer. I'm using the hook attachment for this. I lock it in and get it started. This takes about 15 minutes to come together. However, it does require a little bit of maintenance, as you're about to see. So sometimes the dough isn't quite coming together, so I have to stop it and scrape down the sides. And all I'm trying to do is just assist the process a little bit. I'm not trying to mix everything together all at once. So by scraping that down, I give it a chance to absorb into the egg mixture. After 5 minutes of mixing, I could tell that my dough was looking a little bit wet, a little wetter than I would like. So what I do here is I add just about a teaspoon of flour to help the dough ball come together. And just that small amount of flour will get the job done. You just need some patience and let the ingredients work. Now the pasta dough has come together. It feels a little bit moist, kind of oily. It actually reminds me of Play-Doh that I used to play with as a kid. So what I do is I wrap it in plastic wrap, and then I'm going to move this to the fridge and let it rest for an hour. Next, the tortellini filling. I take 1 cup of part skim ricotta, a half a cup of Parmigiano Reggiano, the real stuff is best for this, 5 basil leaves that I've chopped up finely, a 1/4 teaspoon of dried oregano, and then a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to take all these ingredients and mix them together. Now that I have all the ingredients mixed together, I'm going to transfer it to a piping bag. I wanted to show you guys this. This is the pasta sheet roller, the attachment that I'm going to put on the KitchenAid to make the tortellini. If you don't have one of these, you could also find a tabletop pasta roller, as well as just by doing it by hand with a little elbow grease. So I get the pasta roller attached. You want to make sure you do this securely. So now the pasta dough has rested for an hour. I'm going to flour my surface. I like to do this generously. As they say, flour is your friend in this scenario. So I'm going to take the dough and then I'm going to cut it into 4 portions, 4 equal pieces. Before putting the pasta through the roller, I prep it first. So I flatten it out, kind of form it into a rectangle. And then what I do is I use my hand to taper one end. This will help it go into the roller a lot easier. Now I'm going to start putting the pasta through the roller. You can see that I have it on setting number 1. That is the largest or widest setting of the roller. It has a 1 through 8 setting, 8 being the thinnest or the smallest. So what I'm going to do is work myself from the 1 setting to the 8 setting. What I like to do is I take the pasta and I put it through each setting twice. So starting with 1, then I adjust it to 2 and work my way down. Also, I flour the pasta periodically throughout the process to keep it from sticking. Now, after going through the number 2 setting twice, this is something I do that I find helpful. I take the dough, I fold it into the center onto itself, I rotate it, and then I taper one end. What this will do for me is it gives me a uniform piece of pasta, and as I continue to roll this, I'll get a nice flat rectangle and my sides will be even. So I've continued to roll the pasta periodically, flouring it throughout and getting it thinner and thinner. Because I'm making tortellini, I want this pasta as thin as possible because I will be folding it onto itself. You could think of it as having double the pasta. The same rule applies for when making ravioli. So the thinner I can get this pasta, the better. Ideally, I want to be able to see through it. I want the pasta to be transparent. As you can see here, I've managed to get it thin enough where you can see my fingers through the pasta. This is what I'm looking for. Now that all my pasta is rolled out, I'm going to take my ring mold to cut out my tortellini shells. If you don't have a ring mold, I'm sure you could use a glass, like a wine glass or something else with a round top. Now that I have all my tortellini shells cut out, I'm going to start putting the ricotta mixture into the center. The amount of filling you put in is very important. If you put too much in, they won't seal and it'll pop out. And then if you don't put enough, it just doesn't quite have that same satisfying feel. So this might take a little practice, but you'll get a feel for it. I would say if I was going to put a number on it, I'd probably put about a teaspoon into each tortellini. Now it's time to seal and fold the tortellini. So I start by taking a little bit of water and I go around the edge, and then I'm going to fold it over into a half moon shape. I begin closing it on one end and working my way to the other end. The idea is you want to get the air out. From there, I'm going to wet both corners and then fold them into the center. And I wanted to show you this again. So I go ahead and I wet the outside, the edge of the pasta, fold it over into a half moon, get the air out, and then I'm going to wet the corners of the pasta and then fold it into the center. I give it a little bit of pressure to seal it, and then from there I'm going to transfer it to a floured baking sheet before cooking. And this is important to see. On this one, I had too much filling, and you'll notice that when I go to fold it, it pops open. This is something to look out for. It's not a big deal. You can just remove the filling and re-roll it. After letting the tortellini dry on the floured sheet pan for about 20 minutes, they are ready to cook. I drop them into a pot of boiling salted water. I cook them for approximately 4 minutes, but really the telltale sign is when they start to float, as you can see here. Alright, the tortellini are done. I like to serve these with a little homemade marinara sauce. I take a bit of the ricotta filling, put it in the center, put some fresh basil on top, and then also a little grated cheese. I hope you guys give this recipe a shot. Pasta used to be very intimidating to me until I just started practicing it. And then for a reference point, this recipe made around 35-40 tortellini, which for 2 people I think is a nice healthy portion. But it would be easy to make more, just multiply the recipe. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Enjoy!